We know how important housing is for folks who are coming out of prison. No housing placement, no release. And oftentimes, the first place that people end up with once they are released from prison are our halfway houses that we know are not always the best places for long-term housing placements. So we want to talk today about what people can do to find safe, affordable, decent housing, and where to go to do that. So I'm going to ask Mark Johnson a couple of questions about where do people go? What's the first thing to do when somebody gets out of either prison or jail? They're usually placed in some type of a halfway house. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes they're not safe. There's a lot of alcohol and drug use in those facilities, and they need to get out. So what do they do? What do you recommend?
Well, some of the things that I recommend are that to talk to other people that you know that have been in that situation and ask them what kind of resources that they had or found that they could use to help find housing. And also, I would talk to your probation officer, because oftentimes they keep a list of housing and things like that. But you got to remember that when you're in these temporary, what we call transitional houses, which is exactly what they are, they're just temporary places, that you may be there for just a few weeks or a month or a couple of months, whatever. But you want to look for certain things. You want to make sure that they're close to bus lines or rail lines, whichever you use for transportation. Or if you use, some of our clients have used bicycles to get around. So be aware that some of the places are suitable for that you can ride bicycle to get to work and so forth. So things like that.
It's easy to be discouraged when you find yourself in that very first literally flop house, and in a place of town where you really don't want to be. We want to encourage you not to be discouraged, because it is only temporary, and there are resources that are available to help you find better housing placement. So what would some of those resources be, Mark? What would you recommend? Where do people go to find those? You mentioned your probation and parole officer. You mentioned talking to other folks, but are there other places to go for that?
Yeah, there's lots of different places that you can look for housing. I mean, you can go to the Kentucky Department of Corrections website, which is corrections.ky.gov, and they have a reentry drop-down menu on there that has resources for all 120 counties in Kentucky. And then you can also look for the Louisville Metro Housing Authority. You can get on 211, call 211, or you can do 211.org and find things like that. And also, if you're on supervision, federal or state supervision, I would definitely ask your probation officer, because there should be in every office a reentry person. And that's their job, is to help people find things like that. So I would check with that.
Another resource that our folks have found to be valuable is if they can find a way to work with a case manager. Case management is really an excellent resource that is designed to help you find the resources you need in the community. They have their hands on a lot of different community resources. They know people in the community, and once they get to know you and work with you, they know what your needs are. So case management is always something that we try to recommend people to search out. We try to direct them to some case management professionals. You can find some of these at some of the housing authorities. You can find them at some of the homeless shelters. You can find them even through some of the Medicaid providers will provide some case management as well. It's an important resource that you should continue to search out and consider using. I want to ask Mark about a particular group of people who've been convicted of sex offenses. I know that there are restrictions on housing, and that can be very, very frustrating. What do you recommend for people who've been convicted of sex offenses? I know that Mission Behind Bars and Beyond works with a number of folks who come out of places of incarceration and have felony convictions that are related to sex offenses. What's your recommendation for them?
Well, working with sex offenders presents a whole different ballgame because as you said, of the restrictions on housing, work, and school, and so forth, and that really makes it difficult. So what I suggest is that you do your research, and some of the places that you can do that is through Mission Behind Bars and Beyond. Work with one of our case managers because they often keep a list of local resources, Lexington, Louisville, Northern Kentucky areas, and so forth. And again, probation officers keep a list of approved housing. I used to have a copy of that list when I worked for the Bureau of Prisons, and we did reentry planning with that, and so forth. And oftentimes you can get online and you can see where approved housing is in Lexington, Louisville, Northern Kentucky, and other areas that you can see where sex offender approved housing is. And I would also suggest you contact places like, if you're in Lexington, contact the Catholic Action Center, or you contact us. We get requests all the time through our website for help with things like that. So it's very important. And when you go in to talk to landlords and you make an application for an apartment, be honest with them up front, because you don't want to get moved in and then get booted out, because it's very important to be honest up front. And we've had several clients that have had the applications literally taken out of their hands before when they've applied for apartments and so forth. So get that out of the way, be up front, and you know, when you're being interviewed for the apartment, be honest and upfront about it and stuff, because people will check on that.
And don't be discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a number of folks that we've worked with that we've found housing for them. And there are a number of placements in all of these communities that will work with people who have sex offense convictions. So it takes a little work, takes a little patience, but the reality is that there's hope there. And what we want you to remember as you move into this area of trying to find safe, decent, and affordable housing is be patient, be hopeful. There's housing available for you, and that housing is something that is so important to a successful reentry as you move back into the community of your choice.